In this week's episode, we talk about why vulnerability is a strength rather than a weakness, particularly in leadership and personal growth. We look at the power of building great habits and how this can be strengthened with a future self visualization, how self doubt can be a growth opportunity if approached with awareness and the right mindset. And we talk about daily practices for mindset and well being. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest Define Meaning. Now, let's dive in. Today, I have my special guest, Stefan. How you doing, Stefan?
Very well, thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
So, to start off, just tell us about yourself. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
Sure. My name's Stephen. I'm 58 years old, Scottish, in case you can't tell. But I live in Germany. I spent 29 years in the British Army, traveled all over the world, served in Afghanistan, Iraq, things like that. Married a German lady. And when I retired from the army, we decided to stay here in Germany. So actually bilingual and also binational. So I have a German passport as well. Thank you, Boris. Thank you, Brexit. So I now work as a coach primarily as a business coach. I started as a language coach, business and language, and then I moved into business coaching. I've worked with corporations, but I'll give you an example of how I transitioned from being a classic business coach into being a kind of life coach for business executives. Was I could help them with their business strategy, but my passion came alive when they started to tell me things they were going on in their personal life, with relationships with their children, with limiting beliefs that they were having, that kind of thing. And because it resonated with my story, when I left the army, joined the army at 16, left at 45, suddenly realized that my entire identity was built around my career because I was living, eating and breathing that role. And I went from high profile, high tempo position in Afghanistan, came home and immediately retired. And then sat at home on my own without responsibility, without direction, without just every part of my life had been changed all in one fell swoop. And that caused me to essentially have a break. And this is a very abridged version of the story, but it was in my recovery from that. It caused me to reflect in on my own journey. And it was at 45, so the classic midlife moment, shall we say. And so I kind of dug myself out of that hole, and it was in digging out of my role in the military had always been as an instructor, leadership development, human resources side of things as well. So I kind of cobbled all these life skills, qualifications, and my newfound passion together. And now I essentially help people who have reached a point in their career where they're traditionally financially secure, professionally successful, but they're also hitting that kind of mid-40s life period where the kids, everything's been about getting qualified, getting a good job, getting a house, getting a family. Suddenly the kids are off in Bali setting up a SaaS company or something. And they're still finding themselves in there. You've just turned 40 yourself. And they're finding that actually, I remember joining the army at 16 and they talked about pensions at 40. And I was like, no one's that old. I'll never live to that age. Well, so I completely understand that people are getting to this point in life and realizing there's a whole load of living left to do. And maybe they haven't got the skills, the network, the background, the experience to see what a life beyond traditional success looks like. So I kind of coach them, help them to go towards purpose, beyond success, to purpose, to fulfillment, creating a legacy, that kind of thing. So that's my I've lived that journey and I've managed to cobble it into a profession. That makes sense.
Makes complete sense. I did a post the other day about how generally after 30 and onwards, you start to realize that you've probably been following a lot of what society's taught you. So things like status, money, how we should live. And then you suddenly hit mid 30s, early 40s, late 40s, and then you realize that what you thought you wanted isn't actually what you truly want. And what you truly want is something completely different.
Let me modify that, because I've got 18 years of more time on the planet, because you're not wrong. You're not 100% right, because it's important that we understand that all those things that we did from our 20s and 30s and into our 40s, they were the right thing to do at the right time, but what happens is we're allowed to evolve, so there's this thing, I think it's Daniel Levis. He writes a book about the different ages of man, meaning species man. We have certain urges when we're younger. It's about partying and sports and hanging out with guys, then hanging out with girls and all that kind of thing. And we evolve through that process. So we commit to, yes, you're absolutely right, what societal norms say, what our parents say, and even the culture when I was going through that lifestyle in the 80s, it was nailed on, because everything that we could see was, my father was in the same industry for 40 years, and he was normal. That's what all of his friends did, so we could only reflect on what they were living. But the transformation and the acceleration of changes in technology and awareness, the internet has given us knowledge about the rest of the world. So the reason I make a big point of this is we didn't fuck it up. Excuse my French. Yeah, we did what was the right thing then. But now what I'm doing is I'm saying to people, you have permission to find something else. That was okay. You got loads of skills there. Maybe you made other people rich in that time, but now it's okay for you to consider doing something else, doing something different. It's not that if this is right, that must be wrong. That was right at that time. Well, now this is right at this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's more like our teens, 20s, maybe early 30s. We're exploring who we are, but we're partly programmed by society, but we're also exploring our own body, our own fun. And then we get to the point into our late 30s, early 40s, where we start to understand, I suppose you start to understand who we truly are. We start to connect to ourselves on a different level than in our 20s.
Absolutely. And this is what happens. You must have heard the phrase, we have two lives, and the second life begins when we realize we have only one. And this is a profound moment that we tend to come to around this era in our life. And everyone gets to this point. And my advice is, the sooner you can get there, the better, because it encourages this kind of insight and reflection. Because in those early days, it's from a survival perspective, it's very important that we don't stick out. Literally, if you think about it, in caveman days, if you're twice as tall as everyone else around you, the saber-toothed tiger is going to go, oh, he looks tasty, we'll have some of that. You see what I mean? So fitting in is evolutionarily, if that's a word, required. So we do everything. We want to have the same hairstyle, the same clothes. We want to behave in the same way. So we have these stereotypes that we try to model. And what happens, and incidentally, that's where most of our chronic stress, anxiety, depression, bad habits comes from, because we have this external version of ourselves. But inside, we've always got this authentic, original version of ourselves. And the further apart those two personas are, this is where all the stress lies, in this delta here. But as life goes on, we lose, both through evolutionary but just through the pain and struggle. And we just think, we're done with this. I'm bored with trying to be like everyone else. I don't want to be that guy. And the closer and closer we come to our authentic selves. This is why, as a demographic, people in their 50s and 60s, notwithstanding illness and bereavement and everything, they're the happiest demographic on the planet, because they finally realized that no one cares what they wear, what they say, what they do. And we become more comfortable in our own skin. I'm more inclined to say, not interested in other people's opinions. And it truly is a liberating experience. So it's the best time to be alive. Over 40.
For the people listening, how can we step more into our most authentic self?
Right. So I run people through, my clients start with what I call a life audit, right? There's two main phases to this, but stage one is a life audit. And that's where we just sit down, and it can be as simple as a piece of paper or open up a spreadsheet. And you can do it on a specific thing like my job. You can do it on your relationship. Be careful where you do this. Careful where you leave these notes lying around. Right? But it's an intensely personal thing. So you really need to guard it, because you have to be 110% honest with yourself. And then you just say, right, let's say I'm talking about my job. Line down the center. What things in my job do I look forward to? What give me joy? What boosts my energy? And that can be working in a team, challenges, learning new things, can be whatever it is, responsibility. And then on the other side, what steals my joy? What takes my energy? Filling in countless forms, meeting after meeting, travel, business travel could go on either side of the list. Depends on which one's you. Some guys quite like to get away for a week on a business trip. My point is, you just write this stuff down. That in itself can be incredibly enlightening and cathartic. And then you get to look at your job, not in an emotional way, just in facts and figures. You can almost give each point score. And then by looking at this, you can very quickly see if most of your stuff's on the side of gives me joy. No job or any circumstance is ever going to have all on one side. But you look at those two lists and you go, is that really worth that? And very quickly you can get a kind of graphical or pictorial representation of where you're at. And it's very rare that doesn't align with what you're feeling anyway, whether consciously or if you're feeling pissed off or stressed or just generally grumpy or unhappy. This list will probably align with, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? I've got 5 things there, 25 things on that side. That can then be the catalyst to say, I need to make a change. So that's what I call the life audit format. Where am I at right now? What's going on in my life? Yeah, so that's step number 1, just to get clarity. Then once to go, okay, I want to do something about this. Say, all right then, here we go. And the next thing we call is these are my own names to it, but we'll call it the hero's journey. So let's take yourself as an example, James. You're 40 years old. We split your life to this point down into 5 chapters, 0 to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 24. And again, this isn't done immediately. You go away and you make some notes, and maybe take you a few days or a week to complete this exercise. But you write the things in each chapter that, as you can remember, it doesn't have to be accurate, whether you are 7 or 9, but it puts it in the right ballpark. And you write the things that you remember that were good, the things that were bad, the things that you're glad you did, the things that you wish you did but didn't, the things that you did but wish you didn't, these kind of things. And you do it again and again for each chapter of your life to this point. And then again, you do an audit of that information, and you have a look and say, well, I quite like that. This is very important when we come to this second life thing, is I really loved that between 8 and 16. I loved playing soccer, or I loved playing trombone in the band or something like that. That could be crucial in this next phase, But you take all the learnings from that experience, and then you sit down and either on your own or with someone like me, is we sit down and we say, right, which bits of chapter 1 to 5 do you want to use? Because you're the hero in this journey. And now we're going to script chapter 6. So what do you want chapter 6 to look like? You've got all this plot line going back here to your earliest memories. So let's look to the future. Let's plan your future so that you've got a direction to aim for. Because once you know which direction you're going in, guess what? You've got a much higher likelihood of getting there.
That's part of the idea. Once you know what you want and you have a direction, suddenly I think life becomes, as for me, life for me has become easier, because then I have to put a plan together and execute the plan, and slowly, step by step, bit by bit, I slowly step into who I'm becoming.
You are, shall we say, one of the enlightened ones. So you already understand this on some level, but there's many, many men and women all across all genders who are in your space right now who haven't got the access to perhaps this kind of level of reflection and in depth, but that doesn't mean they won't feel it. They will feel it emotionally. They will feel it in forms of stress, poor sleep, poor diet, tension in relationships and all that kind of thing. And when you don't have a direction, it also triggers not having a sense of control. So that can trigger anxiety just in its own, having lack of control. So you having a plan, there's nothing to say there's nothing to say you will achieve it. And there's nothing to say that in 3 years' time you want to say, actually, I want to go this way. So there's no rules to this, but it is clear. It is important that you have a clarity and you have a purpose. Yeah, because you said it makes life feel easier. I would modify that and say it makes doing the hard stuff easier, because you understand, yeah, this is pretty tough today. I'm going to the gym today. I hate the gym, but hey, if I want to go hiking in the Himalayas when I'm 55, I need to look after my body. Now it becomes easier to go to the gym. But if I tell you, you just go to the gym, why? Well, because I told you to. How much harder is that to motivate yourself to go to the gym? You see what I mean? So that's the purpose. Doesn't make things easy. It makes the hard things easier to endure.
Yeah, I can see that, because at the moment I've had back issues probably for the last 3 or 4 years, and for the first time I've had a lady which tell me the reason I got a back pain is because my feet are splaying out. I've got a pronated foot, so my foot dips down. My shoulders are slightly to one side. So this gives me a idea of what I need to change in order to make myself more balanced, so that I don't have that same back pain for the next 30, 40 years. Touch wood if I live that long.
Yeah, so you've got an external expert to come in and look at you. Yeah, because here's the other thing, right? Youth, I'm full of cliches, me, right? Youth is wasted on the young. So when you had no idea how important it was and you had no idea what you were capable of, you were gifted with this young, energetic, elastic body of yours that you could fill full of pizza and live and, deprive of sleep. And you could do all of these things to it and it would just suck it up. And it gives us this feeling of immortality and invincibility. Well, that's another part of this realization. Generally, you learn it when you go out on Friday night and get drunk, and it takes you till Tuesday to get over the hangover. There's a balance where you realize that fun that I had on Friday night isn't worth the Saturday, Sunday, Monday horrible feeling. So these are all part of these slow changes, and it's important that people understand that they're not different, they're not broken, they're not weak. It's just ages of man that people go through. I loved my youth. I loved being who I was then. I loved being in the army. I loved going skiing. I loved my beer. I loved chatting up the girls. And I'm happy with that, but I don't regret that it's over, because I love not drinking beer. I love being with the one woman who's my soulmate. I love going for walks with my dogs. So I love my life today as much as I love my life then. You see, it's important that we understand we move through these ages and it's perfectly normal. It doesn't mean that your best days are behind you. It's actually, I would argue it's the other way around. If you keep yourself mind and body fit, you can have just as much fun in your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond because you've got the wisdom. Get the wisdom, you've generally got the disposable income, you've got new technologies. So life ain't over after 40. Trust me on this.
I can kind of vouch because I dance. One thing I love to do is dancing. And if you see me in a dance floor, I dance like nobody's watching. I'm one of them. I literally hit, as soon as I get into the dance floor and music hits, I just go. I'm like a racehorse. And I have that much energy. And it's just because dancing's one thing I have found in the last 3 years that I just love to do. And that's the key. It's finding what you love to do. And that again, finding what you love to do, that's a journey of exploring different things as well. But once you do, you will move your day around. You will go to these events rather than go to see family because these things bring you joy.
Good word. Let's put a pin in that. Bring you joy. They give you a feeling of elation. Yeah, they're releasing endorphins and all this. Now, you lead me on to a point. A big thing I make is a distinction between two words: vulnerability and weakness. Okay, vulnerability is where you are comfortable in your own skin and you don't mind people knowing about it. So, for instance, you're actually being vulnerable on the dance floor. You're opening yourself up for criticism from others. That's vulnerable. It doesn't mean you're weak. I would argue it's a strength. It's a character strength to be so comfortable enough for you to go on that dance floor and behave like an idiot and no care. See what I mean? Or be perceived by other people to be behaving like an idiot because of those societal norms and these boundaries that we put on ourselves. And I would transpose that in my business coaching world into a leader, a CEO or something, going into a meeting and being comfortable not being the smartest guy in the room and accepting that he would have to ask for advice from other people. And that's some leaders, many leaders see that as a weakness, but it's actually an incredibly powerful move to make in terms of building trust, in terms of building credibility, because no one can possibly be all things to all men. You see? So you go into the room and you say, right, I'm not a specialist in this area. Tell me what you think about this. And you're giving the group permission to speak their mind. But what you've shown them for a human level, you're not faking it. You're not pretending to be invincible. And I saw it by leaders in the army. I used it myself in the military as well. You lean on your specialists and you call them in and say, right, you're the specialist in this area. What would you advise me to do? I haven't given up control. I haven't given up command. I've asked the specialist for his opinion on something. That's vulnerability in a leadership perspective, but it's not weakness. This is the key. It's strength, because those people will respect you so much more, providing you handle it in the right way. You don't say, "Oh, I don't know." You say, "You're my engineer. This is an engineering task. What is your opinion?" And they go, "Right, sir, I think we should do this. Thank you." No loss of command and control, but I've shown vulnerability and I've accepted that I'm not the smartest guy in the room. So that's a power move.
So how would you distinguish between a weakness and what was the other word? Sorry.
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability. How you distinguish between so for the people out there who are listening now, how would they distinguish between a vulnerability and a weakness?
Well, this is the thing. A weakness is something that society or our own perceptions places upon us. Like you might be sat at the edge of the dance floor and you see all these people moving, pulling some proper moves, popping shapes or whatever you called it, and you do it, right? And you think, oh, I can't do that. Now you'd love to dance, but you can't dance. And it's making you unhappy. You've created that as a weakness. Right. So to flip that into a vulnerability and a strength is for you to say, I'm not as good as them, but I don't care because I'm just going to go and enjoy it. Right. So you've got all those people. This is the preconception we have. We assume that we will be judged by others. That's the fear that people have, being judged. The bad news is you will always be judged, right? Everyone's judging everyone every time. Yeah, it's in human nature. We're constantly gauging, is this guy a friend or foe? Is this a threat? And all that kind of stuff. So we're doing it. We can't turn it off, right? So vulnerability is about saying, well, if they're going to judge me, they can judge me for who I actually am, right? So you go on the dance floor and you've got all these professionals and you're strutting about like you've got ants in your pants or something like that. A weakness mindset will tell you that you can't enjoy the dancing because they're all laughing at you. But two things are true. If they laugh at you, that shows a weakness in their character. But if they step in and help you and give you some advice, or they just let you be you and they're happy for you, then that's good character. That's good people, right? So they're not judging you. They're accepting you for who you are. And those are your tribe. Those are the people you want to hang out with, right? So that would be a weakness. And if you feel a weakness or you feel anything professionally or personally that you cannot express yourself in a way for fear of what other people think, then that's a weakness. A vulnerability is knowing that you're not the best dancer in the room, because then you can do something about it. And there's a fundamental difference here. I'll explain the difference. Vulnerability is knowing you're not the best dancer in the room. That allows you to go to a good dancer and say, I'm not a good dancer. You are. Show me how to dance. It's a power move. You've identified there's a delta in your skills or your abilities, and you're taking steps to address it. Because that good dancer can remember when he couldn't dance, she couldn't dance, and they will willingly help you go there. That's showing vulnerability. Vulnerability is the delta between where I am now and what I want to be. Weakness is when you see that or you perceive that, you do nothing about it, and it causes you not to be that person. Right? So that's my definition of weakness. Weakness is bad, vulnerability, good.
So really, you could turn anything into a weakness or a vulnerability. So I'll give you an example. Say, for example, you had self-doubt. You would naturally see self-doubt as probably a weakness because you're doubting yourself too much. But then at the same time, you could turn self-doubt. Okay, I might doubt myself in this ability. Who can I turn to get some advice and some help from? Would that be right?
Precisely. So self-doubt keeps you small. That's a weakness, right? And you do nothing about it. You just accept your lot. Self-doubt as a vulnerability does two things. It keeps you honest. It stops you from getting arrogant, but it's a start point for growth. So you accept, I'm not as good as, we keep go back to dancing, but I would like to talk more about leadership or, something in a business context, but we'll stick with dancing because you love it. That's good. Okay. So
Yeah,
so you take that vulnerability, shows great awareness, right? Shows that I know I'm not a good dancer, but it gives you a start point to say, right, what am I going to do about that? So it's a start point for growth. And people talk about imposter syndrome, and imposter syndrome is a valid experience, providing we don't let it take charge, because it means that you're stepping up to a different level. So it's an indicator of growth, providing you manage it. All of these things need to be managed correctly. They can be good for you, they can be bad for you. All depends on how you handle them. So someone who's got no imposter syndrome, beware. They're a very dangerous person or a very stupid person. The special forces, military special forces will tell you, anybody that doesn't feel fear is a psychopath. Because courage is about feeling fear, then doing it. But they don't want to work with people that don't feel fear, because those are hand grenades. They're wildcats.
Mm.
That makes sense?
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So self-doubt obviously keeps us in negative thinking patterns. What kind of strategies can people start to incorporate in order to turn self-doubt into a growth experience?
Really simple routine to go through. First of all, just pause and ask yourself a simple question. Is what I am telling myself true? Is it true that I'm not a good dancer? I'm not the best dancer. Yeah, that can be true. Is it true that I'll never be able to dance like that? Is it true that they're all laughing at me? Really? Are they really laughing at me? Look at them, and you question this inner critic, because that's what it comes from. It comes from this inner voice in our head, which is developed to keep us safe. From an evolutionary perspective, our bodies want us to live, eat, breathe, procreate, nothing else. Your physiology doesn't care whether you have joy, satisfaction, motivation, purpose, fulfillment. Not interested. It's about survival of the species. So we have all these systems inside us that when you say paragliding, that sounds like a riot. Every nerve and sinew in your body says, shut up, you fool. We're not designed to fly. You see what I mean? So we have to overcome those internal systems. Yeah. And sometimes those internal systems get overdeveloped. And that's when we, individually or with coaches, we can rewire them using neuroplasticity.
I've got you. So what other things can people do that really helps you find with your clients?
So, well, with my clients, it's great because we can fast track through all of these things. You and I have been chatting now for 35 minutes and I'm dropping all these truth bombs and enlightenment and all that. We can read books. Self-help books are good. The problem with self-help books is they deal on a cognitive intellectual level. I'll give you an example, right? Suppose you're overweight. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to say, if you're overweight, don't eat shit. Eat vegetables at a reasonable time and do exercise. Boom, there you go. 10 million copies. I'm a best-time seller. Everybody reads it and goes, that makes perfect sense. Don't eat shit and exercise. Boom. Why are we all not super lean athletes? Because self-help books deal on an intellectual conscious level, whereas alcohol, poor sleep, poor diet, addictions, they're all happening in our emotional selves. They're tied back to childhood trauma or stories that we are telling ourselves their own. So the problem comes when it's 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday night and all your mates are at the pub with their girlfriends and you're home alone and it's just you and the fridge and a sponge cake. You tell me what self-help book you're going to read that will say that. You see what I mean? So this is where the coaching comes in to go to that deeper level, because overeating, undereating, alcohol abuse, anything like that are outputs of an emotional need inside the body. And it generally takes a coach to go and do the deep work and understand the inputs to aim off so that you understand why Saturday night in front of the fridge is triggering you to want to eat cake. Does that make sense? I keep asking that.
Makes sense.
It does.
Or you're almost thrust upon you. So I'll give you an example. I mentioned beforehand that I had a tooth out. Now, I've had 3 teeth out at the moment, which isn't good because I always used to love eating fruit, but also I've got a sweet tooth. And I'm almost I got this idea in my head that I don't want to end up in my 50s with false teeth like my nan. So suddenly that kind of feeling, you're just like, no, okay. So then it makes it easier. So I've realized that cutting sugar out, I've got to do it. I have to do it. Otherwise I end up with false teeth.
Now that is one method to, okay. I would counter that with you're in constant denial. You've got to be constantly vigilant. You'll eventually hit a thing called decision fatigue, where it will be 10 o'clock on a Saturday night and something else will have happened in your life. Because listen to me describe this and see if you recognize it. As events are happening in your life and emotions are being felt in your body, you're just writing out a list of, I shouldn't eat sugar, however, football team just got beat. It's Saturday night. Come on, everybody's entitled to have a little bit of a good time. It's only going to be one bag of Haribo. I'll go to the gym and do an extra half. Are you hearing this? Yeah. This is your body and your mind convincing you, because they know the Haribo's in the fridge. So you've got to be vigilant against that. And that's why so many people fail. However, if you understand the systems involved, that it's carbs that you're craving, and if you can set up in a routine where you're getting more protein into your body at the right times, and you anticipate that Friday nights are your absolute kryptonite, when you sat watching your favorite TV show and you're comfy after a hard week's work, and that time is when the carb attack's going to come, because it's carbs, it's not sugar, it's not horrible. So you can prep and prime your body to have enough protein in it, which subdues that craving. And then suddenly you're sat in front of the telly and your partner will say, do you want some Haribo? You will naturally go, oh, it's okay, you see. Now, what's the smarter, most likely to be continued version? Preparation or denial? You see what I mean?
If you become more conscious, it'll be preparation. But I suppose
Yeah.
there's always going to be times where it's just going to get you at some point.
This is my point. If you're prepared and you get into habits and routines, guess what you get? You get the chance to say, actually, it's Friday night, I'm going to have some Haribo. But here's a question that I always ask people. I've helped people stop smoking, stop drinking, stop various different things. All you have to do is ask yourself at the time of choosing, am I choosing this because I want it or because I need it? And even if you need it, that's cool, because then what I say is, okay, you need it. Fair enough. You've lost this battle. Let's see if we can win something back. I need it. I'm going to have some Haribo. I'm going to have a beer, right? But it's 9:15. I'm going to have it at 9:30. So you're not doing the blanket denial, which will crush you because you'll spend your whole night saying, beer, got to have a beer. Need a beer. Yeah. No, you take control of your mind and your body in the situation. And you say, I'm going to have a beer at 9:30. 9:30 comes, you go, I'm going to have a beer. Good. Celebrate it, because you needed it at 15:15 and you didn't have it until 15:30. Subtle changes, but it keeps you in control. Right? Then you accept, I fell off the wagon. Next day you wake up. No guilt, no shame. You just do it. And if it's their action reviews, you'd call it in the military. Say, right, let's make sure this doesn't happen again. That's how it works. That's the secret to long-term habit forming.
So can you go into a little bit more detail with that? Because I know from sure that building habits is the key. So a great example is my habit I do before I go shopping is I'll have food. So when I'm in the shop, I'm less likely to shove loads of crap into my trolley. Or another one might be having egg with avocado for breakfast, because I know that fills me up and I'm less likely to snack. How do you help clients to build new habits?
Right. So I use a thing from Dr. Ben Hardy, and it's called the future self, right? And your future self can be you tonight, you next week, you next month, next year, 10 years time, whatever it is. So it all starts with being conscious and taking control of the situation. And let's use your example of the shopping thing. You've projected into the future. In 2 hours' time, I'm going to be in Asda, Tesco, or whatever. And I know that those aisles are designed specifically to catch my eyes with all the chocolate and sweets and everything like that. That's their job. That's why they make billions of pounds a year. By catching poor, unsuspecting idiots like us with all the shiny wrappers and the discounts and all that. So that's your future version of yourself. James at 5 o'clock is going to be in Tesco. Let's prepare for that. Let's visualize that. Right? What can I do? I know what I can do. I can eat some protein. I can get something in my body that's going to curb that primeval response to try and get carbs when I'm surrounded by carbs. So that's how you do it. You look to the future version of yourself and you kind of ask them, what would that version of James want me to do? So James, your 50-year-old James or your Saturday afternoon James both want you not to put sweets in your trolley. So what would their advice would be, go and have a banana right now or go and have something, protein shake or something like that. So that when you're in that threat zone, shall we say, that you've got your best armed for the experience.
That makes sense. So it's like visualizing yourself. You said 10, future self, 10, 15 years time, and really allowing yourself to feel into it.
Yeah. Make them your new best friend, right? So instead of this inner voice that you have now saying, go on, get a sweets, get a cake. Yeah. You can actually train using, I have a 6-week coaching program. Sorry, drop that in there, where by doing repetitions and visualizations of these kind of things, we can literally rewire your brain such that it would show up on an MRI scan as being rewired, where you would have a different experience to what you've always done all your life. So even though you're 40 now and you say, oh, I'm just sugar man, I'm a fiend for jelly babies, we can change that in 6 weeks and make you think it's ridiculous, the idea even to drink, even to eat a jelly baby, so that's all possible. But you do that by visualizing your future self and asking them what they would want you to do. Then you listen to that voice.
Many men have grown up over the years with the idea, thinking feeling emotions is weak. How can men overcome that belief, and how can they start to allow themselves to feel what's going on? Say, for example, they're having a hard day, but they're not allowed to feel that anger. How would you suggest that they can start to allow themselves to feel that anger?
So there's nothing in the human body apart from the earlobes and the appendix that isn't there for a reason. Physical, mental, emotional, physiological. They all have a purpose. And we subdue anything at peril. So if your body wants to sleep and you keep it awake, it will bite you. Same with anger, same with sorrow, same with any kind of emotion, really. It has to have an... So let's take anger, for instance. If someone is living a life as a painter and decorator, right, or they're working in a factory or they're working in an office or whatever, and they're feeling so angry, they feel like they have to have a physical outburst, then that, first of all, tells me there's something in that environment is not right. And I would go back to my life audit. Things that give you joy, things that take you joy. Because it's not normal. Left to its own devices, the human body will not be angry. It's not a healthy condition to be in. It's not an efficient condition to be in. Okay? So there's something in the environment that's causing that emotion to happen. And that's the first thing you've got to look at. because your body will not be denied. It will come out somewhere. It will either come out in a balanced, safe way, or it will appear somewhere. Road rage, excess alcohol, fighting in the pub, arguing with the wife, or worse, that kind of thing. That energy must come out. Energy cannot be created or taken away. It's got to go to another place, right? This is why, point number one, if you're feeling unnatural emotions, more often than the circumstance would apply. I mean, if you're in a patrol base in Afghanistan and you're feeling daily angry, stressed, frightened, upset, then that's fine because the environment matches the emotions. But if you're living your average working day and you're feeling extreme emotions, something's out of alignment. Remember, go back to our two external personas or internal persona. The further apart they are, the more inclined we are for stress and stuff. So that said, when we do feel emotions, we should feel emotions. We should let them happen. Big boys don't cry and all that rubbish. Trust me, I have been in 3 war zones. I have seen some of the biggest, scariest human beings whose tattoos have got tattoos. And I have seen them sob like babies. And I don't remember any of the other heroes around them thinking any less of them for it. Because it's a natural response. It's often a mark of respect. It's grief. It's a mark of love for other people, that kind of thing. And the right people in your right tribe around you will not judge you. It goes back to this weakness vulnerability piece. If you've got a problem with a man crying, it's your problem. It's not his problem. He's showing vulnerability. You're showing weakness. But at the same time, you don't want to be in the middle of a boardroom just sobbing your heart, So again, it's about awareness. It's about catching it beforehand, anticipating supposing your dog's just died, right? I don't make that flippantly because I've rescued 1,500 dogs, and dogs are, the more people I meet, the more I love dogs. That's how my life is. So if one of my dogs has been ill or injured or died recently and I'm going into a boardroom meeting, I'm aware of that. And I might say to people, hey folks, just to make you aware, we had a situation this morning. One of our dogs passed away. I'm here. I'm going to do the best I can. At least you understand the background. And then someone will say something, it'll trigger an emotion. And you might get a bit of a tear in your eye and a bit of a sob, That's understandable. And I've preempted it, and I'm showing a bit of vulnerability. What I wouldn't do is throw myself on the floor and say, oh, poor Rusty, he's my favorite dog, that would be inappropriate because there's no need for that kind of behavior. But the visceral feeling of emotions is utterly allowed and important that we allow. So if you don't want to do it publicly, go and take yourself into a private space, go for a walk and go and sob your heart out. But do not try and keep a lid on it.
Yeah, it sounds good because I know from my own experiences that I've had issues with pent up anger, and I used to, until I became aware of it, used to go out drinking, and that's how my anger would release. Because when I'm sober, I would push it down, but when I drank, there was this idea that suddenly it would come out with a vengeance. But obviously, becoming aware of that emotion, I was able to find more healthier ways, such as I can focus anger when I do exercise. I can shout into a pillow when I'm by myself, and other ways like that.
So those are outputs, and that's fine, and it's great that you've understood that. But so many people are living that right now in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and that's the important thing. That's what's causing the explosion in mental health issues, right? Because never before has it been so apparent to us what perfection looks like. Every Instagram post we see, every advertising, every Netflix movie we see this fallacy of perfectionism. And consciously or subconsciously, we're being primed that we're not good enough. And that, if we only buy that soap or we only wear those clothes, we'll be just that little bit better. The whole industrial complex, media complex is geared against us. The news is geared against us, right? The news is just 4 minutes of depressing noise between advertising revenue. That's all it is. It's tapping into our evolutionary need to understand the fear and the threat. So they tell us really bad news for 4 minutes. And it's just at the end of the 4 minutes they say, but that's not all. Something terrible has happened as well. We'll tell you that after the break. Watch all these adverts on Shine that you don't need. But your brain's there tuned like, oh my God, what happened? What happened in that wee village in some place in Africa that I can't even pronounce? I need to know. We have all these systems in our bodies, and that can trigger depression, anxiety, anger, all of these kind of things. So it's important that we manage our environment. But if we're feeling these things too often, then that's where we need to talk to someone else. It could be a friend, but ideally a coach. This is why we do what we do, because we can identify it. Now, this is so important because this is why I do my job, and one of my biggest frustrations in my job. I deal with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And I give them insights. And this isn't just me. This isn't a pitch, because most coaches, any good coach can do this, right? I give them insights into things. I take them back to places where I say, well, that was the incident that caused this pattern is repeating throughout your life. And they say, my God, I've carried this with me for decades. I've always thought I wasn't good enough. I've always been this person. And I just give them insights. And every day, this is my passion, my joy in this job. Every day I get messages on my phone saying, oh my God, I've had this insight. I've had this breakthrough. You've changed my life. You've saved my life, because we carry this. The voices, the stories that we tell ourselves in our head, if they're the things that are causing these problems, then you need to talk to someone who can just talk you through them. So often just saying things out loud can be all it takes to cause that bubble to burst, and you go, my God, there is hope. I'm not broken. So anyone who's suffering anger, depression, anxiety, doing harm to themselves or others, it's not normal. It is not normal. There is an underlying problem that must be addressed, because it will not go away on its own. It's another key factor as well.
So what are some key daily practices people can do in order to start to uncover some of these stories that we're telling ourselves with our mental health?
Okay, so we're predisposed to negativity. So if you're feeling unhappy, if you think the whole world's coming at you, I promise you it's not, right? We've never been safer, healthier, luckier, richer than we are today. All right. The media doesn't want you to know that. But again, I've been in 3 wars. I've seen every culture. I've been all around the world. I promise you the human animal is fundamentally kind and community focused, right? And if anyone disagrees with this, I'll ask you to do this simple exercise. Compare the amount of evil people, evil, bad people that you have actually met eyeball to eyeball in your life, not read about, heard about, had an entire nation or creed or whatever be described to you, actually met in your life, and compare it to the number of good people, or at least neutral people, that you've met in the last week. And that list will be infinitely larger than that list of evil people for your entire life. So that's just basic maths. The world is not as bad as the media and the politicians will wish to have. So getting into that mindset, I can actually have a 5-day course on I'll give you the link, you can drop it in there. It's free, it's on YouTube. I call my 5-day challenge, and it's a challenge to change your mindset about you and about the world. And one of those things in there is an exercise called the CIA model: control, influence, accept. We've only got 100% of energy that we can give out in the day, right? It's how we're designed. So when we define our day in those three categories, we can allocate energy accordingly. Things I can control, the things I can do, say, think, not do, not say, not think. Influence, my partner, my family, my colleagues, my immediate vicinity. I can influence them. I can ask them to do stuff. I can hope they will do things. Everything else falls into the accept or ignore category, right? So the Ukraine war, the climate, the hurricanes that are happening, the typhoons that are happening. If you're sat in Wrexham or Barnsley and it's a Monday morning, it's okay to be aware of those things. It's okay as a human to have compassion for people who are suffering. But if you're not sleeping because of the typhoons in Senegal, if that's even possible, then you're burning energy from your finite battery. You're burning energy and stuff that you cannot influence or control. Guess where that balance gets taken from? From the areas that you can control, the areas you can influence. So if you're not turning up for yourself, or you're not turning up for your family or your job, because you're burning energy over here on things that are way beyond your control, then that's an awareness that you can adjust and say, I'm not going to give energy to that because I can't change it. So that's the CIA model. Gratitude's another one. We need 3 positives in our life to counter 1 negative, because all of the people in the caves when we were cavemen who heard the strange noise and went, oh, I wonder what that is, they all got eaten by the strange noise, right? So we learned to be cautious. We learned to err on the side of safety and be negative, right? So all the ones that survived in the caves were the ones that were saying, oh, I don't want to go out there. That sounds scary. That was an evolutionary thing. So we're tuned to the negative. That's why the media always give us negative stuff. Can you imagine if Sky News come on and say, hey, everything's fabulous. Honestly, the world's going great. We'd all go, oh, wasn't expecting that. Fair enough. Switch off the news. That doesn't work. They need to sell advertising revenue. So they need to say, right, the whole world's great, but see in this tiny little corner here, there's some shit going down. And we're going to send all our reporters there and we're going to cover it for the next 5 days. Well, our brains suck that in and say, my God, the world must be a terrible place. Look, those people in, buttfuck nowhere in Louisiana still got no home. That's 8 billion people, and we found 20 of them are having a bad day. You see how our minds can be focused in on the negativity. So we can understand that, we can control that, and we can say, right, let's think of 3 things that I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my daughter. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my dogs, and I consciously pump these positive things into my brain to override the default negativity. So gratitude is another one. Got time for one more? Yeah. Our emotional body is much more powerful than our conscious brain. Conscious thinking is late to the party, and it's the weakest part of us. Our emotions will always overcome our thoughts, all right? Except when we use breathing. So all of our senses, hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, all these things, all they are interfaces to get knowledge to the brain, so the brain can decide, are we fighting tigers, or are we resting, are we digesting, sleeping? That's the binary decision that your brain makes. Okay, so it's taking all of this input in. Sky News is coming in, Facebook's coming in, and all that kind of thing. And it's telling our nervous system, holy moly, never seen so many saber-toothed tigers. We got to pump our bodies full of cortisol and adrenaline. We've got to be on edge. We've got to be ready for the fight at any second. That's what Facebook and Sky News is making our bodies do. Now, we can't control our blood pressure. We can't control this noise that's coming at us. We can switch it off. But the thing that we can control is our breathing. And there's a thing called heart rate variability. The brain listens to the heart. There's neurons around the heart which send signals to the brain. And it's the It's the variability of the electrical signals between our heartbeats that tell the brain whether we're preparing to fight a tiger or not. So if you're stressed, this is something that fighter pilots use incidentally, right? Most extreme physical duress, mental pressure that people are under. But it's a very simple acronym. It's breathe. Breathe regularly, evenly, and through the heart. And if you can just take a minute to sit with your eyes closed somewhere and just make your breathing even, so no sharp, sawtooth breaths, not like this, just gentle, natural breaths, but make it as smooth as you can. What you'll do is you'll smooth out your heart rate. That will slow down, but it doesn't have to be super slow. But what you're doing is you're making that electrical signals between the beats stable. Those electrical signals around the heart send to the brain to say, all must be well with the world. So it triggers what's called your parasympathetic nervous system that says calm, rest, relax the muscles, lower stress levels, everything like that. So by using your breathing alone, that's the only method or the main method that I know of where we can impact our physiology directly. You can't increase your blood pressure. You can't make yourself warmer or colder without clothes. But your breath can talk the language that your brain understands to understand fight, flight, or rest and digest. So those are three critical areas that you today can take charge of your mind and your body and your stress levels.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Just quickly, can you just tell us what you do and how people can get in contact?
You'll find me online, Stefan Hines, MBA, and I offer help to people who are already successful and independent and realizing that, as we said, they're coming to the end of the first age of man. And now they're wondering, how are they going to get out into the second age? Or they may not be aware that's the point that they're at, and they're feeling this delta where they're trying to be this guy in the office or this lady in the office, but their internal inner self is kicking and screaming. Those people who want to talk to me, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. And what I offer is a 15-minute call just to say, hi, how are you? Who are you? And then I also have my 5-day challenge, which is free to people. I understand that some people don't want to work with a coach. They're not ready to be vulnerable. Or not, maybe they just don't have the finances. Well, that 5-day challenge can be found on YouTube. It can also be found on my LinkedIn channel. But when we have a 15-minute call, what I will probably set up, providing everything aligns, is we'll go through a 1-hour coaching session after that, where we'll say, this is what it feels like to be coached by me. And then at the end of that hour, generally people have massive, massive breakthroughs and insights. Very often you'll see grown men cry because I've finally given them permission for it to happen. But it's just a release of all this pent-up energy. Then after that, we can say, right, let's look at my 6-week program, my 3-month program.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.